Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Our National Chairman and members of the Functional Executive Committee, our comrades and friends, brothers and sisters, Nime, Name, everybody gathered here, and those watching us or listening to us from other locations. I want to thank all of you for taking a moment to commemorate this day that will go down in our history as Ghana's Day of Infamy. Normally, a gathering within the month of January of would have expected to be a festive, celebratory. Unfortunately, our gathering today, which has brought us together, and brought together not only members and friends of the NDC, but Ghanaians of all walks of life, is anything but celebratory. It is a memory of anguish and betrayal of trust by those in whom we entrusted our. A year ago, just close to this very ground we're standing on today, Ghanaians were violently attacked and some injured, ironically in the course of an exercise that was expected to cement our growth and maturity as a democracy. On that fateful day, a day that has tragically and disgracefully gone down in our history as a Black Thursday, our nation, like something out of a horror movie, witnessed an assault of citizens, a severe assault the likes of which has never occurred before, except during brutal military dictatorships. We are all taught that those terrifying days when men in uniform, acting with impunity, visited unimaginable atrocities against innocent citizens was over. Until this fateful day, 31st January 2019, when party thugs dressed in security outfits and their collaborators in police uniform brought back that nightmarish experience during the 31st of January 2019 by-election of Ayawaso West Wuogon. Indeed, the image of that day are surreal, and one would imagine that those images were from Iraq or Syria, Libya, or Somalia. But no, these are images from Ghana that has been touted as the model of democracy in Africa. My dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, while we are all witnesses to that sordid history, we must remember that it is those who have been physically maimed and injured and others who have been mentally scarred from the experience with their families and loved ones who bear and relive the memory and pain of that event each and every day of their life. The cowardly act of barbarism perpetrated by government elements against citizens whose only interest was to choose a member of parliament for themselves could have been worse. And as he just said, it was just the intervention of God. If you looked at the number of bullets that were discharged on that day, to think that not a single person died, it is only God's intervention that prevented it. Thankfully, the National Democratic Congress, as it had always done throughout our democratic journey since 1992, and on that day, once again showed leadership and put peace and security of the country first by deciding to withdraw from that by-election. Indeed, later events would prove that the dastardly act was an orchestrated plan that was intended to be replicated at other voting centers to intimidate and suppress our support base and to prevent them from coming out to vote. And indeed, we've been exonerated. 1 year after that disgraceful chapter in our nation's life, there are questions that remain unanswered. Why must any responsible government compromise the security of the nation by infiltrating the security setup with militia members forming the core of a specialized SWAT unit that the IGP under whose command they should fall confessed that he knew nothing about? If the current constitution of our national security remains the same, in a case where we need protection, do we seek refuge in the police who were unaware of these rogue elements using police vehicles and who stood passively by as those elements rained terror on innocent citizens? Why is the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who should be defending the law, make mockery of it, and thereby set a dangerous precedent by accepting that assault is permitted if one believes that one has been provoked? Why did the President pretend he cared about vigilantism and wanted to tackle it, and yet refused to abide by the key recommendations of the Emil Short Committee, which among others included the prosecution of identified offenders and the disbanding of the illegal parallel SWAT unit? My brothers and sisters, anyone who professes to love Ghana, the only country that we all have, should be concerned about the President's actions, which has almost certainly emboldened these criminal elements within his government and party to attempt more attacks against political opponents, especially with the 2020 election just about 10 months away. Let me make this very clear. We have reached a critical point, and Ghana's future as a peaceful United States country is at stake. A leading member of the MPP declared publicly that Ayawaso West Wuogon was just a dress rehearsal and that the real event will be on 7th January 2020. Since he made this statement, I haven't heard the President, his Vice President, the MPP party leadership dissociate themselves from this statement that was made by the leading member. Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Ghana, under the 1992 Constitution, have a constitutional mandate to defend the Constitution and our national sovereignty. And we will call on the people of Ghana to prevent any subversion of the will of the people and resist any attempt to undermine the Constitution of Ghana on 7th December.
Charlie, right now they point the gun, come here.
Still live on the Joy News channel. What you're watching is a live coverage of the NDC's commemoration of the one-year anniversary of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election violence. Just speaking was the former President John Dramani Mahama, of course, their presidential candidate. He has spoken after a number of speakers, including some victims of the violence that broke out that day. The former president, of course, has said that what happened at the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election is a dress rehearsal for the 2020 elections. He felt that security forces acted with impunity. That statement is a running theme through a number of the speakers who have spoken at that occasion, including Kwesi Pratt Jr., who is managing editor of the Insight newspaper. He has also said that what happened at Ayawaso West Wuogon has never happened before in our history, at least when it comes to election violence. Dr. Bassett Bamba has also been speaking. He's a law lecturer in the University of Ghana. He says that the National Security Forces acted with impunity, and he says there is enough cause for concern when it comes to what has happened and what it means for us as a nation. The former president, John Dramani Mahama, has also been saying that this is action that he must act against, in fact, when he is back, if he is elected to power. Adam Bona is also a security expert. He has been speaking as well. He's one of the speakers that spoke. Sam Nate George is Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram. He's also been speaking. We also heard from Isharo Yaro, who is a victim of that incident, speaking of how the ordeal that he went through. He says he received healthcare constantly for about 10 months. You saw there the shot of his bandaged leg, which is the current state that he's in, and he's been in that state since the 31st of January 2019. There was another witness to that incident who describes himself as a victim. He says that he's surprised, in fact, and he thinks it's miraculous that the security officials opened fire at the crowd and no one was hurt, but a number of people were still injured. He claims that it's a simple question he asked, that why are you shooting at the people? And that resulted in the officials, the national security officials, reacting in anger and opening fire at the crowd. Now, of course, we know that after this 31st January 2019 incident, there was a commission of inquiry opened to look into this particular happening. This was led by Justice Emil Short, former commissioner of Shraj. It was also peopled by Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, who is the head of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. There was also Patrick Kwating Echampong, who is a former IGP. And the executive secretary of the commission is Ernest Kofi Abochi, who is a law lecturer and a former dean of Gimpa Law School. Of course, the commission put out some findings. Among others, they said that the Interior Ministry, the setup really of Ghana security forces, has provided some avenues for duplicity of roles, and that means that there isn't clear command and control when it comes to the security forces of the country. They named the fact that there's a national security minister, national security coordinator, and the national security advisor, and also a minister of state in charge of national security at the presidency. They said that there's duplicity of roles within these persons, and it must be clearly defined what their roles are. The speakers at this particular forum have been speaking to this, and we'll go back now and listen to John Dramani Mahama, former president.
The region, that is Greater Accra, must dissociate themselves from the event. Listen to the word, dissociate themselves from the event. If people are demonstrating or manifesting because of a certain reason, and the police provide security, does it mean that the police are associating with the reason for which the demonstration is taking place? And so when he says they must dissociate themselves from the event or face severe sanction, which professional police officer will send a message like this? It shows the bastardization of the institutions of state that have taken place under this NPP administration. Of course, NDC is coming. We will reform the police service. And so, I read this notice and I felt sad. And I believe that our police officers must remember that their dedication and their duty is to the state and the Constitution. And in everything that they do, they must remain neutral and non-partisan. It is a very sorry date for the police service to issue a command like this, asking all security personnel, one, not to provide security for the event, and then two, to dissociate themselves from the event. It means they shouldn't do anything to associate themselves with the events of that fortunate day in this constituency. I feel very sad. But I promise that we will take action when we come into office to restore the confidence of the people of Ghana in their police service. The motto of the service is service with integrity. We will work to restore the integrity of the Ghana Police Service. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I wish to state clearly that the assault visited on innocent citizens at the hands of their own government that was constitutionally bound to protect them, will not pass in vain. And that at the appropriate time, the recommendations that were made to offer restitution and compensation to the victims will be acted upon, inshallah, under an NDC administration. We will do everything in our power to ensure that they not only receive justice, but receive adequate and fair compensation for the trauma that they have gone through, even if not immediately, inshallah, very soon. I thank you, and may God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, as always, for the thought-provoking, straight-to-the-point, and inspiring speech. I am inspired. I'm sure that you are too. Let's welcome the organizer for the Greater Accra region. He has some announcements for us. Then we can take the vote of thanks. And
It's live on the JoyNews channel. We are covering the NDC's commemoration of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election violence, which broke out exactly a year ago on the 31st of January 2019. I'll take you through a few points of what the former president, John Dramani Mahama, has been making. He says that the national security operatives were acting with impunity that day. Let me remind you that a number of officials in black polo neck shirts, wearing shirts, in black polo neck shirts with the inscriptions NSC, came to the home of Delali Kwesi Brimpong, who was a parliamentary candidate for that by-election on behalf of the NDC, and they came. There are different accounts as to what happened exactly that day. The official government story, which was corroborated by a number of ministers of state appearing before the Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission, they say that they had reports of a cache of arms kept in the home of Delali Kwesi Brimpong. They tried to go inside to search the home of Mr. Kwesi Brimpong. They were prevented from going inside, after which violence broke out. They claimed that the gunshots that were heard by a number of people, including our reporters, actually came from inside the home of Delali Kwesi Brimpong. However, that story is not confirmed or corroborated by members of the NDC who were near the area, including those who were injured. So Mr. John Mahama says these national security operatives I just described for you were acting with impunity. He also says that the by-election violence against citizens can be described as barbaric. barbaric is the word that he had for it. Of course, a number of persons were injured as a result of that day's incident. If you would remember, when the East Legon police commander faced the Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission, one of the issues which was raised, especially by the former IGP Patrick Kwati-Champong, was that he did not allow the men to seek treatment at the hospital. He did not, the men were not given the clearance to seek treatment at the hospital until the NDC's national executives arrived at that police station. He also called it, like I said earlier, a dress rehearsal for the 2020 elections. The former president, John Mahama, he raised a specific issue about how the IGP, or well, the police hierarchy, issued a directive through the rank and file for all police officials to dissociate themselves from what happened at that particular by-election. He says that the institutions of state have been bastardized, and an NDC administration led by him will definitely reform these institutions which have been bastardized. You're live on the JoyNews channel. My name is Daniel Dazi. Now, we know it's been 1 year since a simple by-election at the Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency ended in violence. Of course, the NDC has been remembering the events that happened on that particular day. And in this commemoration ceremony, we've had Samuel Ofosampo, for the chairman of the NDC, speaking. He has been speaking to the voter register, which is going to be compiled if the EC would have their way. Of course, IPAC had a meeting with the Electoral Commission yesterday. He described some of the events that occurred there, and he goes on to again states the reasons why the inter-party resistance against the new voter register would not want the Electoral Commission to compile this register. Of course, we know that there were reports that there was violence at that meeting, that the leader of the LPG, Kofi Akpaloo, nearly slugged it out with Hassan Ayariga, the leader of the All People's Congress, APC. Now, those near fisticuffs, of course, were prevented by the Archbishop Gabriel Palmer Buckle. So the chairman of the NDC addressed some of these issues. Of course, soon after that, there was Sam Jatta George, or Sam Nate George, who is member of parliament for Ningo Pram Pram, who also spoke. Now, one main thing he said was that he was going to take legal action to ensure that government implemented some of the recommendations made by the Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission. Like I said earlier, the Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission, led by Justice Emil Schultz, made a number of recommendations. One of those recommendations was that the gentleman who assaulted Sam Nate George should be charged with assault. Remember, the white paper, which was issued by government, stated that there was a sufficient defense of provocation by this gentleman, because Sam George obviously provoked this official of national security, who in turn slapped him. And because this defense exists, they decided not to continue with the prosecution. However, the executive secretary to the commission, Ernest Kofi Apochi, who himself is a law lecturer and a former dean of Gimpa Law School, has stated that this is wrong. He stated clearly, speaking to us on the Super Morning Show, that this is wrong, and that the provocation does not come in this particular crime. And so there is varied and split legal opinion about what the events that took place and how government should act after this particular event. Of course, speaking of the law lecturer Abdul Basit also spoke at that particular commemoration. He has been talking about how dire the circumstances were of course, these incidents that occurred. He says that government should definitely take action, and he says that this cannot be something that the law must condone and government must condone. Of course, the Constitution was referenced. Adam Bonner, who is a security expert, a security analyst and head of security warehouse, has also been speaking. He says that this is an indictment on the Constitution, which was voted for in 1992. He believes that it has cast a slur on the legal systems that we have in the country. So that, in a nutshell, tells us exactly what went on there. Of course, a number of persons spoke. There was Mr. Kwesi Pratt, who says that Ghana is moving on the path of chaos. No security force can stand against the wish of Ghanaians. Another statement there that Mr. Kwesi Pratt made. He said that violence like this is the first in Ghana's history. Of course, we'll bring you more voice clips or more sound clips of exactly what transpired as that commemoration in Joy News today, which comes off in just a few minutes, and also in later bulletins in the day. My name is Daniel Dazido. Stay with us on the Joy News channel. We bring you Joy News today immediately.